speaking for him, what he's done for me, and keep me on task. Yeah, I got paper. 40, the year 40, 40 years old was supposed to be the best birthday ever. Well, my 40th birthday it turned out to be the year a demon named addiction would spring into action and begin to wreak havoc on my life and on those that I love. Now, I was raised in a proverbial middle-class, all-American home. Mom and Dad were music educators in the Knox County school system. I attended church religiously and was raised to believe that God was to be feared, not to be reckoned with. You sat in church quietly with your hands in your lap and Grandma handing you the Butterums Lifesavers. And this is what I believed meant having a personal relationship with Him. Anybody would ask, because I did what I was supposed to do. Back in those days, show my age, there were certain things in life considered taboo by society's standards. One of those involved those who drank, liquid spirits, that is, and I don't recall any real education about alcoholism or addiction, much less it being recognized as a disease. I was taught to believe that partakers of such activities were lazy, that they didn't want to work, and they didn't work because they didn't want to work, that they were not Christian, and they were selfish freeloaders. They were the black sheep that brought shame into the family. You whispered about them. And there were some in my family I know firsthand. I could never become one of them because I went to church. I had morals and I was an obedient, good little girl. So it didn't concern me one bit when I took that first drink at age 17. That drink gave me the courage and confidence that I had always desired, the affirmation, approval that I'd craved from others magically came to fruition. What I had no way of knowing, however, was I had also released a demon, and its name was addiction. With that first drink, I had set in motion addiction's plan to cunningly and assiduously change who I was, who I planned to be, and who I might have been, and what I became. What I ended up becoming was this thing called a functional alcoholic that went on for about 26 plus years. That means I was successful in holding down a really good job. Everything from judges to periodontists to a worldwide engineering company, #1 in their industry. And I was a really good wife and a loving mother. Took care of my kids, did all the right things. I had the approval and even admiration of friends and associates. Yada, yada, yada. The problem was, addiction in the form of alcohol was preventing me from putting God first in my life. It began creating a void within me that in the end was deeper and darker than any abyss fathomable. You know what I just tried to say, but I think I missed a syllable. Fathomable. I knew I shouldn't have used that word. Over time, that abyss grew deeper. I began feeling inadequate, misunderstood, overlooked, and lonely. It seemed that my good life and my loved ones were either pushing me away or that they were being pulled away by some invisible evil force. I was becoming drained physically, emotionally, and worst of all, spiritually. But alcohol and its cunning comforted me. It skillfully kept me distracted and incapable of acknowledging that it was now in charge. Now, I always thought I was walking the right walk, doing the right thing. It's cunning. In December of 2000, the time the demon named addiction had been preparing for finally arrived. A series of catastrophic events began to occur in my life, back to back, until I caved Addiction had won, and thus began my 6-year death spiral. Riddled with failure, shame, and guilt beyond belief, I began unwittingly sabotaging everything in my life that was important to me, who I desired to be, who others knew me to be, and worst of all, the trust and faith my family had in me. Behind me, I left a path of chaos in the form of divorce, confused children, very confused, unemployment, damaged family, empty relationships, hopping around, and much more, trying to fill that void, that abyss. Eventually, I had nothing more to my name than a bag of dirty clothes. To make matters worse, rent on the hotel room I'd been dumped in by a so-called friend, the last thing I had any hope in. He said, no, can't help you here, go away, don't ever call again. Goodbye. 2 weeks you got. Over that 2-week period, I managed to put $200 worth of liquor in my system. I wasn't eating either, and I wasn't even using a glass. I was now penniless and homeless. When I looked up, rock bottom was nowhere in sight. I was completely alone. I had lost all hope that I would make it out of this alive. Nor did I care. Where did everyone go? I had a lot of time to think, and I started remembering each of them. The man I'd married, a devoted husband for 20 years, 1 month shy of 20 years. My loving children, my mother, father, my employers, co-workers, friends, those even that I'd partied with that called themselves my friends, even the wonderful man I'd met after my divorce, who I eventually fell in love with. Just couldn't handle me. It wasn't until well into my upcoming recovery that I learned they had all agreed on one thing. These things, I should say. She's not going to make it out of this. She's going to die. And she'll die drunk. No one can help her. No rehabs help. None of her close brushes with deaths, and there were plenty of them. Not our love, not even our prayers, nor the powerful prayer lists I was on at many churches. None of them seemed to help. That's because I couldn't see beyond this addiction. It wouldn't be long now, though, that I would come to understand and to accept responsibility for the reason I had lost everything and everyone in my life. One night, towards the end of that 2-week period, I was laying, I kid you not, laying face down in this bed, and I was deathly sick. And I just began praying to God, to Daddy, and I'm sorry about that, to take my life. Just please take my life. I couldn't stand it anymore. I just begged him, give it to an unborn child. Give it to somebody worthy. I didn't, honestly, I felt like less than a valuable stinking sack of rotting shame, guilt, disgust, and failure. But you know what? God loves his creations a whole lot. And he loves us whether we believe we deserve it or not. And I'm grateful for that. Okay, thank you. I'm really scared as hell. And God is so supernatural. He's so awesome. He knows your heart. And he knew my heart before all the destruction I'd caused. And he heard my prayer, all of them, even as I was causing the destruction. But in that very last prayer, asking for him to take my life, you see, he didn't hear a death wish. Instead, he heard me. He heard my heart crying out for his help. For I know the plans I have for you. From Jeremiah 29:11. God sent me an angel that night. And I do believe that that angel lifted me off that bed that I was face down on. Because I don't remember standing up. And remember how I was taught to worship him quietly, and I was standing there with my arms above my head, reaching for the sky, reaching for him. And I began, something inside just welled up and took over. I'm sure the neighbors in the hotel thought, crazy woman, call 911, she's lost it. I was yelling at the top of my voice, dear God, I take it all back. I do want to live. I do want my life back. I love you, and please, God, if you think I'm worth it, then I think I'm worth it. I kind of startled myself. I sat down. This is not embellishment, I'm serious. Sat down. Gideon's Bible was right in my hand. Good old Gideon's. Don't know how it got there. I just randomly picked the page, opened up, and looked down at the page. And the first thing I saw is what I read. And it said, any man who walks with Christ is a new creature. The past is gone. Behold, all things are become new. That was my first God stop. That was him saying, Lisa Ann, I heard you. Grab my hand, here we go. Forget what you did, you're good. Well, I looked upward after reading that, randomly, and said, you serious? Really? You heard me. You put this in front of me to read. At that moment, it became crystal clear he had delivered me from the possession that demon called addiction, named addiction, even before I had said amen. I felt it in my heart, my mind, my body, and in my spirit. I wasn't craving, I didn't desire, I didn't think about it. It was gone. Yeah, I'm the flesh. I'm still shaking, DT. But the inside of me was healing as I sat there. On that day, February 17th, 2008, it's my rebirth day. On that day, I finally understood what they meant by having a personal relationship. And that was the day that he and I began our personal relationship with one another. So personal, in fact, that I now refer to him as Daddy. And Daddy was now in charge. Sorry. As you may know, God sometimes uses people as his earthly tools to assist him in helping those in need. In my testimony, I have to explain that he felt it necessary to assign an entire toolbox of tools to help him with my needs. CARM, the structure, served as his toolbox. The staff at CARM and its extended programs were the tools he handpicked to fill the toolbox. Each of the tools, the staff people, had specific usefulness, but the tools had to work together as one toward a common goal. Guess what? Restoration. So with God as foreman, the tool team embarked on what would become a 14-month restoration job on me. What entered CARM as a total wreck was transformed into living proof of his amazing grace. CARM is the reason I began to understand and eventually believe that no matter what had happened in my past, whether by me or to me, that God says I'm still lovable. In other words, able to be loved and forgivable. That he has a plethora of blessings still to come for me, and that he can use even a wretch like me as evidence of his unconditional love, his unfailing faithfulness, and his desire to rescue and bring home with him even the worst behaved of his children. And Saul wasn't such a good little girl after all, I guess. It's because of CARM and those that support CARM that I'm alive and able to stand here before you tonight. Even as I speak, There are literally hundreds of lives being touched by Carm in the form of a meal, a bed, words of encouragement, and just support, unprejudiced acceptance, and unconditional love. Oh, and a toolbox that serves as a soft place to fall in the form of a nice cot with a really nice mattress and a nice little blanket. They're wonderful people. You need to come meet some. Investing in Carm is a gift that offers new life where once there was no hope at all. Can you say priceless? Well, I thank you from the bottom of my restored heart for believing in Carm and supporting its mission. And one last thing. God's timing is always perfect. So I went from way up here, way down there, to so much higher. I'm now a full-time employee at Carm. Giving back, it took 5 years of prayer. I knew when I went into Serenity that's what I was going to do. But I had to wait. Let's see. Sitting over here, I have to mention I've got my daughter, my son, my other son, that never gave up on me, always stood up for me. Grayland, Tennessee, Bailey, Cheyenne, and Rob. And remember earlier I mentioned a guy that I'd fallen in love with. A second time I'd fallen in love and very deeply. Well, he's here too. His name's Chuck Kress. And we're engaged to get married. Hymn number 1, Carm and their spiritual base and program number 2, and all things are possible. Thank you.